One of the great features of retro computing is that you really can travel back in time and get the full experience of home computing in the 1980s and 90s. Find out what was happening, discover the latest games, and play them on your computer. So let's grab a ZX Spectrum and revisit 1983. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. One of the best parts of retro computer emulation is that you can really go back in time and get the true experience of home computing with all of these classic machines. Now, I'm not talking here so much about the emulator giving you an authentic recreation of the operation of the machine, though that is of course an important part, but more about the whole computing scene and how we used to use these devices. Now, home computing was very different in the 1980s than it is today, not just because the machines were less powerful, but also in how we interacted and used these computers. So in this video, I'll take you back to 1983 and we'll have a go at home computing ZX Spectrum style. Now, to build our time machine, we can of course use a real ZX Spectrum, but most of us, I guess, are going to be using a modern computer running an emulator, and all we need then is an internet connection and a couple of bits of software. So I'm going to be using a Windows-based machine, and I'm going to be running the Retro Virtual Machine emulator. Now, if you want some instructions on how to set that up, then please do have a look at this video. It's a good one to use, as it will work on both Windows, Linux and Mac OS as well. Now, there are of course other emulators such as Fuse and Spectaculator, and they will work just as well. But whatever one you want to use, just make sure you've got that set up and running as a 48K Spectrum. Now, the emulators will run fine with a normal keyboard, but the ZX Spectrum did use each key for a whole range of functions. Now, you're going to need to get hold of a keyboard map so you know which buttons to press. Now, if you pop over to any search engine and look for a ZX Spectrum keyboard layout, you'll find a whole range of pictures, so just get yourself one of those for reference. Now, most of the emulators use the left shift key for the cap shift and either control or the right shift then for symbol shift. Another option then, and if you want a good weekend project, is why not get hold of an old ZX Spectrum and turn that into a USB keyboard, and that will give you an even closer to the real deal. Now, if you want to have a go at that, do please check out this video where I used an Arduino Pro Micro and an old ZX Spectrum Plus case and keyboard and turned that then into a standard USB keyboard that I could use with my PC. But once you've got everything set up, we've now then got our very own home computer. So what to do with it? Generally, when you got your first computer, it would arrive, you would open the box, and you'd be left on your own. There was no YouTube or anything like that to look up for various tutorials. But all of these computers did come with, well, a fairly hefty manual. This was not one of your quick start guides that you get today. This was a proper what to do if you've never seen a computer before guide. So let's get hold of one of these for our ZX Spectrum. So again, if we go online and just simply search for ZX Spectrum user manual, we'll get a range of options. And this one here, I happen to know, leads off to a full PDF version of the real original ZX Spectrum user manual. So as I mentioned, these manuals really were designed to take you from, well, basically you may never have even seen or touched a computer before. So taking you through that whole idea of what the bits were, what they did, how you plugged them together, and how you get your machine up and running, and a few basic commands then to get yourself going. So again, you can see here from the table of contents, that's really what we're looking at. So as we come down, it's telling you all about the bits of it, all the different leads, how you connect it together and plug it into your TV, because of course you'd be running it off your family TV or a portable TV or something like that, and all that down from there. So how to use the keyboard, again with the Sinclair that's a bit more complicated with all of its different keyboard modes, and then some basic commands and so on. And then a lot of these computers came with a built-in basic interpreter, and when you first turn them on, that's really what you would be talking to. So all of these commands are basic. So after that then, of course, you come down to programming. Programming was deemed to be something that you would be doing with your computer rather than just loading in various games and applications. So again, in these days, not all of the things you would want to do would be possible through commercial software, so you would have to write your own little programs and apps to be able to do certain things, and then that was just part of the whole home computing scene. Of course then, tape storage was what we were using in those days with cassette recorders and these magnetic tapes. So again, you'd need to learn how to load and save programs to and from those. So that's really sort of where this manual takes you through. Again, a lot of the computers came with a programming course, a basic programming course. And again, that's covered in a separate programming manual for the ZX Spectrum. So this manual then, I say again, this takes you through all the commands you need to know to get up and running. And one of the great things about the Retro Virtual Machine emulator is that it does rely on you actually getting into this and understanding. So it does simulate the idea of putting you in front of your brand new computer with a cassette recorder, and you then have to do everything as if you were at a real machine. So do make sure you have a look through this, get the feel of how the ZX Spectrum works. But now let's go off and have a look at where we'd actually be getting information and finding out about what was going on in home computing and getting hold of software and so on. So let's start having a look at that. So the early 1980s was really the infancy of home computing. When the Spectrum launched in 1982, the idea of connecting any computers together was pretty much only for business and universities. So, with our Sinclair machine, there are no bulletin boards and definitely no internet. So for information, we had to rely on magazines, TV programs, and other friends with computers. So for friends, we've now got the internet, so you can connect now with literally thousands of other Spectrum enthusiasts on a whole range of message boards. So I'll leave you to explore that side by yourself. Now here in the UK, at the time, we had a big government initiative underway to make the UK the most IT capable country in the world. This was partnered by the BBC, which is our national television service, and the Computer Literacy Project then planned to get at least one computer into every school in the country. To help people get familiar with the new technology, a number of specialist TV series were produced to give people the basics needed to start using these machines. For this, they wanted a new computer to front the programs. Now, although the Spectrum was considered for this, it was the prototype Acorn Proton that was selected, becoming the famous BBC microcomputer that we all grew up with. Now, the complete computer literacy BBC project is now available online for us to see, so just head over to this website. Here you'll find all 267 programs, 2,500 clips, and all of the software demos that were used in this series. So do spend a bit of time just having a look through here and seeing what's available. So all of this was great and really interesting, but if we wanted to keep up to date with what was actually happening with our machines and hardware and software and all of those sorts of things, we relied on printed magazines. So these tended to be monthly magazines covering various aspects of computing. There were lots for specific computers such as the Spectrum or the Commodore 64 or so on, some specialising in gaming and every aspect of computing. And of course, nowadays these are pretty much all available online for us to read. So for ZX Spectrum computing, there is a great resource online at the worldofspectrum.org. Now, if you head into their archive, you'll not only find pretty much every software title ever produced for the ZX Spectrum. And again, one of the great things about this website is that they have gone out to seek permission to distribute the software. So all of this is available legally for you to download. They also then have links across to various magazines and so on. So again, we can start looking through magazines here and seeing what they have available. And again, this is all available online for us to get access to all whenever we want. I'm also going to have a look over in the Internet Archive, Because one of the best magazines for, well, all of the Sinclair computers was Sinclair User. And in the Internet Archive, if you search for that, you'll actually find this listing here, which actually has every single edition and every single annual produced in that magazine series. So if you click into that, this will give you a PDF viewer here. You can, of course, download these magazines as well. But if you have a look on the side here, you'll see that we have access to, well, absolutely every issue. So this will take you through from April 82 in the first edition, and that is where the ZX80 and ZX81 were available, through the launch of the Spectrum in sort of mid-82, and then all the way through to the end when the Sinclair machines finally were stopped production. So I find that these magazines are truly the best way of getting a real feel for what was going on with home computing at this time. So again, we can, if we scroll up to the top here, we can start working through these in order. And again, that's a great way for seeing how the ZX Spectrum and the Sinclair scene was developing from as I say, from the ZX81 all the way through to the launch of the Spectrum, the problems they had with delivery, and so on. And one of the really, really good aspects of this is that we do get to see deep down into all the information for this particular computer. It's very easy when we sort of look at sort of like top 10 game lists and so on to just see the same programs coming up over and over again. But going through the actual magazines and going back to this sort of source material, if you want to call it that, you get to see all the advertisements and everything for all of the small companies that probably didn't make it into the main scene. And again, with the world of Spectrum having a fantastic archive of the software, and we can actually go and get hold of those programs and have a look and see what was actually going on. Both all the really best programs and, of course, a whole series of well, less good programs, if you want to put it that way. But again, that was all what was happening in the 1980s, where we were getting professional software houses were not the run-of-the-mill way software was being produced. There were still bedroom programmers who were creating the stuff, putting out software, and again, having a good go at it and producing lots of fun things. So what we'll do next is let's pick a magazine. We'll start going through that and we'll see what was happening with the Sinclair scene at that time. So this is the setup that I tend to use when I'm having a look through these retro magazines. So I have my retro virtual machine emulator set up here running my 48K Spectrum. And if of course I go up to the cassette icon here, this is where I can then start to put my cassettes in to play various bits of software that I find. I also then have my browser open, and that of course is going to let me have a look through the actual magazine itself. But I also then have the World of Spectrum website open, and this is in the archive area on the quick list, so I get the sort of alphabetized access to all of the software. And again, I'm going to be using that of course to pick up things that I find. So we come back into the magazine then. So we're going to have a look through the October 1983 edition here, Sinclair User. And as you can see, there's various sort of news headlines coming up here. Again, the micro drive, I think, was just being released and coming on the market. So they've obviously got a review of that. So if we come into the magazine, we can start to work our way through. So you're going to get adverts then from various sort of hardware manufacturers. And there were lots of little companies springing up around this computing scene. Again, there were lots and lots of people were buying into the whole home computer idea. So there were lots of new customers coming up who wanted various add-ons and things to make life easier with their computers, such as these little desktop units and so on. So there's a whole sort of cottage industry springing up around all of this home computing. So again, in 1983, the ZX81 was still pretty prominent, as the Spectrum was about a year old at this point. And you can see sort of software companies were advertising, and they were still producing software then for the ZX81 as well as for the ZX Spectrum. So again, we get these software adverts. And again, lots of these titles, which you probably would not see in the top 10 lists, but again, they're all out there and they are all ready for us to play. But let's have a look through the magazine a wee bit more first. So again, we're getting lots of different hardware add-ons and so on, adverts for more software. If we keep on going through, there was a lot of computer clubs setting up around the country. Again, lots of people were getting together to try and sort of meet up and discuss things and share ideas. So this magazine here was just listing out a number of those, giving you contact details so you could either get in contact with them or physically go down and join in with them and see what they were up to. A lot of these magazines then, of course, gave you all the industry news that was going on. So if we zoom in a bit here so you can read this. So again, the Sinclair Spectrum really did take off really well. So again, by August '83, it had reached sales of 500,000 units, which is pretty good for 1 year's worth of production. And again, the whole scene was just really expanding at an exponential rate. And you can see that sort of in the news releases here. So various ideas of various updates to the software and so on, so you could keep up to date with that. A new computer coming out here from Mattel Electronics, this Aquarius. I have not come across that computer before, so I'm assuming it didn't do massively well. But again, you're seeing how the market was developing. Coming across, you can see how the various sort of software houses organise themselves, starting to group together to try and sort of produce, sort of maintain standards and so on. So all of that was all being set up at this time. And then going across, we now get to the idea where people were a lot more technical about the way they were using their computers. So we do now have sort of various technical help pages and so on to try and help you get the most out of your computer, fix problems, sort out ideas and so on. And again, more software, and again, even more software here. Again, that was one of the big industries taking off, was gaming and the software industry itself, which of course didn't really exist before the home computers as such. More hardware here. I'm not quite sure what this one does. Some sort of light-sensitive joystick device. Again, I have not come across that. And again, various other bits of software. So let's actually have a look at the software side of things then. So here we have an advert for Fantasy. I'm not sure if that is the company name. So we have some software by Quest and software by Fantasy. So that may well just be a software retailer. But let's have a look and see if we can find any of these games then. So this Violent Universe then, that sounds like one that could be quite interesting. So if we zoom in and see what the details are on that. So again, it's saying here, this is a totally original game plan with addictive, challenging, offering complete visual experience with animated graphics and violent explosion effects, and compatible with all of the leading joysticks. So that sounds like a bit of a winner for me. So let's go and see if we can do that. So it's Violent Universe, software by a company called Quest. So if we go over to our world of Spectrum then, so again, I'm in my quick list for the archive. So if we go across to the V section, and then scroll down here, so Violent Universe should be somewhere around here. And there we have Violent Universe by Quest Microsoftware. So let's have a look at that. So again, the software in here is all listed out with various details as regarding its sort of what machine it's for, what type it is, who again was involved with the creation of it. We've got some artwork here as well. So let's scroll down here a bit more. In the file section, that's where we'll actually get hold of the tape files themselves. So here we have the original release software as a TZX file. So let's download that. And I'm just going to drop it into a Spectrum software folder here. So it's coming down as a zip file. The Retro Virtual Machine emulator is happy with zip files. So inside that zip file will be the actual TZX file. So if your emulator doesn't handle zip files, then just simply extract it out and it will handle the TZX file. That is one of the standard formats for Spectrum software. So let's just save that in there. But while we're here, we can of course then get some information about the game. So we have here an image of the cassette inlay. So the cassette tapes would come in a little box, and they would then have this little card in the box, which would tend to have instructions on how to play the game. So again, on the front of it, it's got the advertising that you would be able to see in the box as it sat on a shelf or something. And then on the other side of this would be some instructions. So if we come back out of here, so there is here a text document for the instructions. So this is telling us what to do in the game. So again, it tells you about what's going on, your various mission and your weapons, instructions on how to play it. So a lot of Spectrum games people did not always have a joystick, and some games didn't actually support joystick, so you would have to know what keys to press on the keyboard to make various things happen. So you can see here we have a set of keys. So Z and symbol shift to move left and right. They're opposite sides of the keyboard, and the M and X are opposite sides of the keyboard. So that is what I would suggest would be an awkward key scheme to make. But that does match in with a lot of games on the ZX81 and the Spectrum use the cursor keys, which were on these, and I think the 6, 7, 8, and 9 keys on the keyboard. So that does actually match in with the layout for those, which, so although it seems strange, it was sort of a Spectrum-y thing to do. So again, we're going to use the joystick for this, just to get around that whole keyboard layout stuff. But again, all of these games inside World of Spectrum will tend to have information to help you play them a bit better. So we've got the tape down. So let's jump into our retro virtual machine. Pull up our tape recorder. So let's put a tape inside there. So I'm just going to press the stop eject button, and that will bring up my file selector. So again, I've gone to where I've saved that file, and I'm going to drop that file into the cassette tape. So there we have it sitting in there. So of course, I now need to go on to my ZX Spectrum and actually get that game to run. So we're going to type in load, followed by our inverted commas. So that's the J key, followed by the symbol shift and P. So again, the symbol shift will either be your right hand shift key on your keyboard or the control key. So once we've got that, we can just press enter, and that sets the ZX Spectrum now looking for the tape recorder to play in the software. So let's turn that on and see if we can get this software loaded in. So we should hear the tape tone coming up. And again, as that plays, we should hear little bits of code coming across. So there's the program being found, and that was loading in a little bit of software. So it's now going to go to the second piece of data on the tape. And you can see on the tape over here, it's telling you which bits it's playing through. So we've got the next bit coming in, which I think it looks like is an 8K version. So that's going to take a bit of time to load in. So I'm going to go up here to the fast forward, and that just should get us through this loading section a bit faster. So that's our software loaded in, and you can see we're now in our ZX Spectrum. So if I get rid of the cassette recorder, we can now have a look at the game itself. So we can see the controls for getting the game started. So we're going to want to set up our joystick. So I'm going to go up to my joystick icon up here, and I'm going to turn that on to emulate a Kempston joystick. So if I now go to J, as it says in the instructions, if we go to J, that should take us to our joystick selection. So we want a Kempston joystick. So we should now be able to play this game. So P2 play. So fire to get that going. And here we go. So there's our ship as a little X, and I'm then doing these gas clouds to try and get these things to crash into them. So let's have a look here. So let's set up some gas clouds. And there we have our game playing away. Oh, and I think I just got killed there. Okay. So you can see that this particular Spectrum game then, again, it's from the sort of early era of the ZX Spectrum, where a lot of the software was being written by, well, effectively amateur coders who were sort of self-taught and just sort of knocking out games perhaps from their bedroom. A lot of the software houses had not yet been fully developed, and a lot of the software techniques to get sort of smooth animations and larger sprites and so on hadn't yet been figured out. So this is sort of fairly typical of this. And again, by going through these magazines and then following through into the subsequent years, you'll see how the standard and complexity of the games just gradually increases as, well, basically people just got better at writing the games. So back over to our magazine, we can have a look further through and see what else was going on and what we can do. So obviously we saw in the headlines that the microdrive had just been released, so this is a review and breakdown of that. And you can see that it does get quite technical. We did seem to be working at a lower sort of technical level. And again, sort of various bits of add-ons and so on. One thing I found interesting here was we have an advert here for what effectively is an early version of Alexa, I guess, where you can control various household devices, sort of smart home type things from your either ZX81 or ZX Spectrum. So again, people were starting to develop a lot of the ideas that we're seeing coming to fruition now, that we have more powerful computing devices. Again, some games did have big launches. So this is from a larger software company and a game called Valhalla, which is a really good adventure game, or graphic adventure game, which is worth trying out. But again, lots of other things to sort of have a look at. Now, as you go through the magazines, you will see lots and lots of sort of adverts for things. But eventually, most of these magazines did come to an actual sort of software section. So these are programs that were created by readers and then sent in. And then the magazine would list them out for you to type them in. So here we have a game for the ZX81. So we have the listing down here. So again, it tells you a little bit about the game, but you could now just go through and you could type this into your computer and you would then have a game ready to run. Quite a lot of fun of this was, of course, as you type it in, you're going to find various mistakes or make mistakes yourself, and it does show you how the software works. So this was another great way of adding extra expertise. So you would go through your basic manual and learn how the basics of coding, and then typing in these games you would see various techniques and sort of hints and tips as to how to optimize your code and then get your software running that bit better. So this was another great way of increasing your ability to actually be able to program your computer. And again, as we go through here, you'll see there's various games and software listed out here. Again, here's one for the 16K Spectrum. So again, you would type in all of this code and then you would have your very own game running on your computer. So again, another aspect which sadly seems to be missing from today's use of computers. So going through these magazines as well, you will come across other features that are quite interesting. So obviously, these were deemed to be not only just sort of home computers and gaming computers, but also professional computers for use as business. So here we have some business software here. So we have Taskword 2, which was a word processor for the ZX Spectrum. So if we head across to World of Spectrum, we can of course have a look at that. So again, it not only has all the games, but all utilities and applications and business software. So if we come down here looking for Taskword, so here we have Taskword, and there is our Taskword 2 software. So let's go in there and grab hold of a copy of that. So again, you can see we've got the quite a few different variations here. So let's go for the original software release as this TZX file. And we'll just download that. We'll have a look at what software we have here. So the Taskman software, so these are the instructions. So let's have a look at the PDF for that. And there we have Taskword 2. And again, this is probably a full manual on how to use this software, including how to get it to talk to the printer and so on. Again, you'll see it's not as simple as it is today with just connect a printer up and off it goes. You did have to get things set up and get the two devices talking. But let's have a look at the actual software itself. So if we pop into our Spectrum here, we can come across, so let's pop that tape into our cassette machine. So let's do our Taskword 2, and then let's go off and load that into our computer. So let's load and bring up our cassette tape here, and press play. They're starting to load in. And let's find our Taskword. So let's fast forward past this loading area. And there we're into our word processor. So let's just get rid of the tape recorder. So hopefully this should be a normal word processor. So that seems to be pretty okay. So let's go back and let's see if we can fix our word here. So Spectrum. Not quite sure how you insert a character there, but again, you get the idea that we now have a word processor running on our ZX Spectrum. And again, they've obviously redone the fonts on here so that we can get more characters across the screen. So again, a usable piece of software then for your small business in 1983. So hopefully you can see then that this magazine really is giving us a real snapshot of home computing in this October 1983. Again, as you work through, you'll start to see some of the more famous titles starting to come out, like the Hobbit, obviously here, and other bits and pieces. Now, what I say, one of the great things you can do here is, of course, we're looking at this 1983 one. If we fast forward, so let's come up then to sort of near the end of the Spectrum era, sort of up in the sort of 1987, and we can see that we're getting a lot more high-tech games coming in. Again, the marketplace had of course grown here. The games industry was taking off and was becoming a sizable business. So you can see that there's lots more money going into producing games, producing computers, and so on. That's reflected, of course, then in the magazines. And again, we're seeing that there's a lot more chat now about the gaming. So you can see there's a definite change in the emphasis in these magazines, where I say there's less and less to do with the actual sort of programming side of things, because people were, of course, just falling into that idea of really using them as gaming machines, and that was the big use of these computers. So again, you'll see even the letters and so on tend to be more about the actual games and so on. You're getting these top games lists and everything else. So hopefully that should give you a real idea of how to get back, almost time traveling back to 1980s and experiencing home computing as it was back in the day. So hopefully have a go through yourself. Do just work your way through some of these magazines. As I say, it's great to follow them through in date order, so you can see the progression of both the technology, the games, the way people were using computers, and so on. I hope you've enjoyed this and found it interesting. If so, please do click that like button and subscribe to the channel for much more sort of retro gaming, retro computing, consoles, electronics and making projects. I look forward to seeing you again very soon, and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.